Again, good evening, everyone. First and foremost, how many people have been to a seminar that Healthy for Life has put on? Brought Brian Peskin in here. Hands up high. Well, at least half the room. Let's give Healthy for Life a round of applause for continuing to bring us resources like Brian Peskin and Dr. Rowen. My name is Jake Veely. I'm the author of Healthy for Life University. I've been fortunate to work with Healthy for Life over the past many years and have since been able to work with Brian Peskin and Brian Shattuck here on all kinds of different projects and products. And I noticed when I walked into the building, one of the first things that I heard people talking about was interactions with their physician and comments around individual health issues that we have going on right now. And I also heard a couple conversations around health insurance and, you know, kind of the debacle that's going on in Washington right now. How many people want to leave it up to Washington to take care of our health problems? Yes, we all know that healthcare reform begins in the home. And one of the great resources that we have here tonight is Professor Peskin and Dr. Rowen to talk about the new PEO solution book that they have just released. And I'll tell you, I've read an incredible amount of scientific literature, and I've been around the block in the medical community, and this is one of the finest resources I have ever seen put together, not just for physicians and their patients, but for individuals just like you who are looking for resources on how to get a real grasp on your health. So tonight, all of you are in for a real treat in being able to hear everything that these two have to say. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Professor Peskin, who is now, this is his third book he's authored. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Always delightful to be back in Iowa. How many people have heard me talk before on PEOs? A lot of you. How many first time? Cheers on Jan show?
Yeah, I heard you on the radio before.
Okay, good. My background's electrical engineer. Real quick summary. My wife became diabetic, doing, quote, everything right. And it's, I don't know what to do. She was a pharmacist, so she's in the medical field. This happened in her 30s, type 1, shooting insulin, thin, exercising her tail off, low fat, high carb, everything she was told. So after about 5 years researching the medical textbooks, not studies, because I live in Houston, we have MD Anderson Hospital, has Jesse Jones Library, which is one of the top 10 medical libraries in America, complete different understanding of what we're being told. The science would say this, what you're being told is the opposite. So here's the situation in America today. The, quote, cause of the problem is given as its solution. Now, if you think about that, what could be more insidious? So I'm delighted to be here today to launch our new book. It's called PEO Solution, Parent Essential Oil. This is written for physicians to bring them the 21st century medical science they haven't seen elsewhere. Now, I spend my time in the medical journals and medical textbooks, but physicians don't read these type of journals after they're in medical school or after they're practicing. They read physician journals like New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of American Medical Association. They don't typically read Journal of Lipids and that sort of thing. So I'm delighted to have this new book. It is state-of-the-art. If you're a patient, like most of you are, and not a practicing physician, you'll get the inside track on what the world's leading physicians are now getting. So we've got a very big following. Introduce Dr. Rowen. He's Phi Beta Kappa from Johns Hopkins, internationally known for oxidative medicine, the father of medical freedom, the first in the nation to bring us integrative medicine, where you don't have to just prescribe drugs. So Dr. Rowen is a big proponent of that. Internationally known oxidative medicine, and as the editor-in-chief of Second Opinion, brought leading-edge, real-life solutions to our problems. So here's Dr. Rowen. He could say a few words about what brought us together. Dr. Rowen is a near raw foods vegan, by the way. So I'm more of a carnivore. So we've never, ever had any collaboration between two things. I'm a theoretist, Dr. Rowen's a clinician practicing, and I'm more of a carnivore. He's very close, near raw foods vegan. So we found a common ground, and typically two people on this sides would be hitting each other with baseball bats. So let Dr. Rowen give a little talk on what brought us together. What he find, he's vetted my work for 5 years before fully embracing it, and he can tell you why.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. It's a real honor to come and talk to you. Before I tell you what brought us together, I just want to see a show of hands. How many of you are currently taking a drug?
Wow.
I would say more than half. Now, my term for that is a synthetic petrochemical pharmaceutical. Everybody understand that? Okay. Now, I have an award. Does everybody know what this is? It's $100 toilet paper. It's not backed by anything, but it's still recognized by what we call the government. All right. I will give this to the first one of you who can name me a single synthetic petrochemical pharmaceutical, with the exception of antibiotics, that cures any disease. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about it, and if one of you can, I'll give it to you. In fact, I'll give you a second one if you can, all right? And then you'll understand why Obamacare can't work and why no government intervention can work when you think about it. Are there any physicians here? No. Okay. By the way, I was just investigated by my state medical board, and I pulled out this $100 bill, and I laid it on the altar of the investigator, and I asked him the same question. And he turned fecal-faced red, and he couldn't answer it. And I'm being held to their standard? Now, what brought Professor Peskin and me together? A colleague of mine called me up one day and said, "Do you know anything about Brian Peskin and his book, The Hidden Story of Cancer?" I said, "No." And at this time, I was writing the newsletter Second Opinion, and I'm always interested in this type of stuff. He said, "You need to look at this." So I called up Peskin. I called him. I'm open-minded. And he sent me his book, and we got to talking about it. I read the book. I'm very interested in cancer. I treat a lot of cancer, and I want to be able to help you, not the profession, not the chemical industry, you, because you're the patient. My duty is to you. And I said, this is interesting, because I'm an oxygen man. He said that I do oxidative medicine, and I've been doing oxidative medicine longer than any living physician in North America, since 1986. Ozone, ultraviolet blood irradiation, etc. And it's the cornerstone of what I do in my office. And it fixes more problems than everything else I have combined. And it's safe. So I read it, and we talked about fish oil, and I said, this is interesting. But you know something? I've been brainwashed by the fish oil.
Yeah.
Because that's where everything is. And I said, I'm open. I want to see more. So he kept a continuous floodline to me, and I devoured everything. And over the years, he said, I'm an organic, raw food, near vegan. I do eat some dairy. So I would prefer not to use fish products, to be honest with you. I don't eat fish. I lived in, I felt like I was coming back to Alaska today. I lived there 22 years. Now I live in Northern California. But so I gave up fish when I came to California, and if I could do something to get out of marine oil, yeah, I'd like to do that too. But marine oil had a lot of articles around it. But I'm going to admit, I'm not an MIT-trained scientist. I'm a clinician. He's an MIT-trained scientist who can read these articles probably better than the average physician can read them. So I got to give him credit. And then the articles started getting better. And a couple articles came down the pike. And finally, we had a couple articles comparing, and this is what I wanted to see, articles comparing marine oil to parent oils. Now, parent oils are plant-based. I'm a plant man. I'm a vegetarian. Okay, I'm a vegetarian, so I wanted to see that. Everybody's bragging and boasting about these marine oils. Well, let's see it controlled against real essential fatty acids. Marine oils are not essential fatty acids. They're what we call derivatives. The essential fatty acids are linoleic acid and alpha-linolenic acid, 18 carbon chain. They're this long. The marine oils are that long. And they're highly unsaturated, making them very unstable. And I'm also a pragmatist, and I observe, and I'm a clinician, and I have a strong belief in the Creator. I know this is the Bible Belt here. You guys do too. And I don't believe that God makes mistakes. And that's in my mantra, and I've written that in my journalism. God doesn't make mistakes. Amen. Thank you. And I said, you know, the pundit said, we have a slow conversion of the parent 18 chain carbons to the longer chain. And they said, it's slow. So we need to force feed marine oil. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, this doesn't sound right logically. Well, finally, I got some articles from him, one of which just blew my mind. They fed monkeys, primates, marine oil, and then looked at what happened to their liver. Their liver membranes became peroxidized, rancid, eating the marine oil. It was so bad that it consumed all of the vitamin E in their liver in an effort to protect their livers from the rusting. Rancid oils are rusted oils. You know what rust is on your car, and you can't paint over rust, because if you do, what happens the next day? It comes right back. So this is rust. So their livers were rusted out. So obviously, there's danger to it. And then I got articles showing that when you force feed marine oils, you're stuffing your mitochondria with these long-chain unsaturated PUFAs, P-U-F-A, polyunsaturated fatty acids, long chain. They're extremely vulnerable to oxidation. Your mitochondria are your furnaces. I'm a mitochondria man. That's energy. That's where the energy is made. It's like your internal combustion engine. So there's combustion, and you don't want your engine made of wood. You want it made of steel, or it's going to burn up. Well, your mitochondria don't want to have these extraordinarily vulnerable to oxidation, long-chain unsaturated fatty acids. They're going to age. And when mitochondria age, you age. And you're going down when your mitochondria can't make energy. So that was the next nail in the coffin. And there was one more, wasn't there?
Experiment.
Oh, yeah. Then he sent...
That was a big one. Investigating oils with respect to arterial health. That was in 2010, where we gave people parent essential oils, and I'll get into more detail what they are, compared to fish oil. And it was shocking. The people taking fish oil had arteries that were 11 years biologically older than people taking the PEOs, the parent essential oils. So this was shocking. Statistically, incredibly significant, probability-wise, and a very strong effect in everybody. So this is unprecedented.
So he just, that was the final nail. Right, clinical. So now I had the perfect storm. I had the absolute proof in the literature that force-feeding these long-chain oils was toxic. And he had a study that showed that not only were they not effective, they might actually be clinically damaging.
That might be. They're 4.5 years aging. You're better off doing nothing. This is what that proved. Fish oils made you anti-age.
Now, how many of you are taking marine oils now? Don't be afraid. Thank you for your honesty. Have you been here to hear Professor Peskin before? No. Okay. But many of you have been.
Let me just tell them real quick what a parent is. Parent omega-6, parent omega-3. They're called essential, okay? Essential fatty acids. I like calling them parent essential oils. Body can't make them. That's all you need to know. There's 2 types, your body can't make them. Next thing you need to know is the parent omega-6 is critical. Everybody's always talking about parent omega-6. We're overdosed on. We aren't overdosed on. When you look at the tissue, and I really look at physiology, it's 11-to-1 in favor of parent omega-6 to omega-3. What we are overdosed on is adulterated parent omega-6. Why? Because it's in all the cooking oil. To get long shelf life, the food processors have to stop the oxygen transfer of the oil. This is so a fast food restaurant can get a month out of the same oil in those French fries and the fried fish, and every restaurant and every baking commercial enterprise can use the stuff without it going bad and have long shelf life. You can't have rice or anything going bad. Now, it goes bad because if you ever walk by the fish area and you smell it, it's awful. That's Dr. Rowen's rancidity, the rusting inside the body. So there's two types. The adulteration is awful, and they're required. Your mitochondria has no omega-3 in it. 20% of the mitochondria is fats, and it's virtually all parent omega-6. So the biggest deficiency in the world, in America, is adulteration of the omega-6 cooking oils. And any of these oils you use at the supermarket are all omega-6 based. They don't use any omega-3 based oils because they go bad too quickly. So that should tell you something right there. They don't even use the parent ones because they go bad fast. Now, the derivatives are longer chain, so they're not broken down, they're built up. You have very few derivatives in the body. The medical profession was misled in the 20th century information. Remember I told you at the beginning, PO solution is about 21st century medical science that they haven't seen? When they look at positron emission testing from the USDA and from the National Institutes of Health, less than 1% of the parents go to derivatives. The brain uses 7.4 milligrams of DHA, for example, per day. That's it. The average amount in a fish oil capsule is 20 to 500 times when you look at what they're being prescribed. So everybody is getting overdosed with fish oil. Anybody taking it, bring it back. It is a poison. And I've got 3 journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. The newest one just came out last week, Journal of Lipids. Just type it in Google, Journal of Lipids. It was peer-reviewed by a professor of biochemistry that specializes in lipid oxidation. 15 pages, comprehensive review on why fish oil is a poison. And they didn't want to publish it, it was too long. But they decided because it was such a bad effect with fish oil, it had to be published. I got it published. Just put in Journal of Lipids, comma Peskin, you'll pull it up, won't cost you a nickel, it's open journal. I was invited to do it, and there were no page charges, so it was a big honor. There were 2 others. The Iowa experiment from here is in there. The parent oils are critical, and what's happened is finance is masquerading as science. The fish oil group got together because in the beginning it's, I have spoiled fish, where do I sell it to? I'm not selling it to the good fine restaurant, they're not gonna buy it. Whenever anybody has a waste product, the nutritional market, because everybody is so desperate for something, these people dump it off. So they sold spoiled fish in the beginning, but it doesn't even matter, bottom line. If it's the best fish in the world, their oil acts as antifreeze because they're living in frigid water. Is anybody here living in frigid water? No. Anybody here have gills? Look in the mirror. I don't think you do.
Let me elaborate on that. Remember, we talk about God doesn't make mistakes, right? Okay. Now, they're trying to convince you that you're missing marine oils, right? That you have some type of genetic need for these marine oils. How many of you believe in evolution? I don't see a hand. All right. How many of you believe in creation? Okay. Now, that said, how many of you believe, based on evidence, and I'm an evidence person, that human beings probably arose out of the plains of Africa? I do, because the evidence shows that human beings probably first appeared in Africa and then spread out. Now, that doesn't defy evolution or creation. That's where were we to begin with. So if we were in North Africa, how the hell were we getting marine oils? We're land creatures. That's number one. So we were created, and there weren't salmon in the lakes of Africa. And even if we were eating fish, I sent him an article that surprised him that showed that if you look at the fatty acid content of fish in the lakes of Africa, they've got a lot of saturated oils, and they have no long-chain unsaturated oils because they're in warm waters. We are not in 34-degree Alaska water, where there's low oxygen and cold temperatures to prevent the oils from going rancid. So it's just logic now that says that we're not supposed to be loaded up with this stuff.
Sold a very bad bill of goods. And then I came across a journal article by Holbert. He's a professor in Australia. DHA, which is the big miraculous thing in fish oil, right? DHA, EPA. They always say DHA, we need lots and lots of. It spontaneously goes rancid 320 times faster than olive oil. Let me repeat that. 320 times faster, which means by putting it at room temperature, it turns to rust automatically. Now put it at our temperature, which is close to 100, 98.6. And like Dr. Rowen said, the monkeys, no matter how much antioxidants the body had, it's not enough to fix it. So the dosages of fish oil are suprapharmacologic overdoses. And this is what I publish. And all you have to do is look how much is in the fish oil capsule. Remember I told you 7.2 milligrams. You're getting hundreds of milligrams in fish oil dosages. And the other thing you have to look at, forget Africa, forget anything. When there was no fish oil supplements, which is pre-1960, zero, pre-1970, were there gross brain disorders? Were there gross neurological issues where the nervous system was going nuts? And was there gross visual impairment? Because these three areas have the most DHA, EPA in them. The answer is no. And even when they looked at vegetarians that eat no fish at all, they had 85% of the levels that anybody eating fish had in their system, which proves, just like Dr. Rowen said, your body makes this. Now they say slow, and they act like everybody has. There's two enzymes, delta 6, delta 5 desaturase is what they're called. They say they're slow. Well, in engineering, slow doesn't mean anything. We look at a time constant, it's steady state, where is it? So slow doesn't matter. It's the amount, and the amount is minuscule. Like I told you, less than 1% stays, goes to derivatives, 99% is parents. So and now Dr. Rowen focuses on the parents, everybody else is focusing on the derivatives, and this is why fish oil is awful. It's only good for one thing, lowering the immune system, like a steroid. Yeah. Now people will say it's anti-inflammatory, and I get real mad. Even Dr. Rowen would say, and I said, wait a minute. Lowering your whole immune system is not a true anti-inflammatory. It's an immune suppressant, so you gotta be very, very careful. And the more you think about it, that's not the way to go. You can have an anti-inflammatory, and the omega-6, the first derivative of that is called GLA, and that leads to prostaglandin series 1, which is the most powerful anti-inflammatory on the planet. So if anybody here has arthritis, has any kind of inflammation, has any kind of arterial buildup because of inflammation, this is what causes the Iowa experiment to get the results they do. That's a true anti-inflammatory. Now you can't go out and buy PGE1. It is available synthesized, but it's so much money no one would ever get it. Your body makes it. So that is done. The omega-6 series is much, much more powerful than the omega-3. And this is what they don't tell you. So PEO solution gives you the science of all of this. And the cool thing about it is we distill it down. If there's very important things, we give you an analysis of what did this mean. But unlike most other authors, we give you exactly what's out of the medical journals, the quotes. So you can see for yourself what's said, because most of the time in these articles you see, the body of the article does not substantiate the headline they make up. Anybody see a couple, about 3 weeks ago, one of these sprinkle things on the food? They just nailed the FTC for misleading advertising. Sensia? Yep, Sensa. So everybody's looking for something. You sprinkle this on the food, you lose weight. Well, they got fined $25 million, and they should. Today it just came out, testosterone. If you take that, it leads to heart problems. And I was talking to Dr. Rowen. He never was subscribing to that. So these oils are the basis, by the way, of your natural steroids. They're the basis of your hormones. They are tied to cholesterol, and the whole thing with cholesterol is the structure. That's why it doesn't matter what the LDL number is. The whole medical profession is a rule. Their head's spinning because we don't understand. You lower cholesterol, it doesn't lower the heart attacks because it doesn't matter. It's called a dependent variable. If you're an engineer like me, there's no blood cholesterol sensor. I've never seen anybody publish that but me. Outside, of course, the medical textbooks. I've never seen it published in a journal article. Like Dr. Rowen said, God doesn't make mistakes. If a cholesterol sensor was needed, there'd be one because there is a sugar one. Blood glucose is tied to everybody to 1 part in 1,000. Not 1 part in 10, not 1 part in 100. That's 1%. 1 part in 1,000. So your body can tightly regulate anything. Sodium, calcium, all of it is highly regulated. So we're all the same in this respect. Very narrow ranges. Cholesterol doesn't matter. There's no sensor. So this is where you have to start. And this is the way I think. And this is what Dr. Rowen sees. So we work together where I can give the theory and the explanation always is consistent in clinical practice. So it's really interesting.
Let me elaborate just a little bit on the word adulterated, because you've heard that before. Adulterated means altered. These essential fatty acids have a specific three-dimensional structure. You could have the same molecule with the same number of carbons and hydrogens and oxygens, but if it's hydrogenated, the three-dimensional structure has changed, and it would be like taking my right arm and left arm and switching them. I still have a whole body, but my arms are reversed. Do you think I would be very functional? You know that. Well, that's exactly what happens with these when they get hydrogenated or they become trans. And I'm going to tell you now that when you cook your food and when you heat it in oil, you're eating trans fats. Number one. And margarine, how many of you eaten margarine for years? Right? Well, I know many of you have and you don't want to admit it, but now the word is out on what margarine is. It's all trans. Because those oils were liquid in their natural state. So then they hydrogenate it and it becomes more, quote, stable, but now it's toxic. It's like taking a key and breaking it in a lock, and now you can't, the lock is jammed. The trans fats get into the enzyme just like the lock and jam the enzyme, and your enzymes are stuck. Well, that's one form of adulterated fat. The other form is oxidized. Well, that's one other form. Now, how many of you have ever worked with linseed oil and put it on furniture? Lots of you have. I have. So it's kind of, you know, it goes on real smooth, and then within a couple hours it starts getting tacky, and by the next day it's solid, right? That's rancid oil you're working with. That's what boiled linseed oil is. It's already oxidized, it's rancid. Imagine that process going on in your cell membranes.
And there's 100 trillion cell membranes. 100 trillion. That is a lot. And these oils comprise 25 to 33% of every cell and every mitochondria on top of that. The mitochondria are in addition to those 100 trillion. There can be hundreds of mitochondria per cell. So just imagine if there's a deficiency in these kind of numbers, would I expect there to be a problem? Of course, I may not be able to tell you specifically what it is, but I'll tell you what it is right now. Diabetes, lack of energy, heart disease, and cancer. Those are the big four right off the bat. It's such an easy solution. That's why it's called PEO solution.
How many of you here have diabetes problems? Quite a number of you. My wife and I go to India every couple of years and do volunteer work in a charitable hospital. It's the only hospital I have hospital privileges because I don't want to work in an American hospital. They wouldn't give me the time of day for what I do. This hospital is very open to what we do. And we've taken ozone and other things there. And the first time we were there, we're seeing men half my age, peasants, farmers, hard workers, slender men, in their 30s with diabetes losing their legs. Now we don't see that here, but we're seeing it there. Here, type 2 diabetes is an issue of generally obesity in 90% or overweight. Everybody would agree with that. In my office, we fix virtually 100% of people with diabetes. But there's slender people. My body morphology. And I went home, and I went back to my room that night, and I meditated and prayed over it because I really wanted an answer. And the answer came very easily because I was observing what these people were eating in India. This is a modern...
By the way, India is the #1 diabetic population in the world. Southern India, vegetarians, not the northern, the southern.
Exactly.
He answered why.
These are vegetarians, mind you. Who would believe it? Vegetarians, getting heart disease and losing limbs. Now, and I'm a vegetarian, right? I'm going to tell you the difference tonight between me and you and them. This is modern India. This is not India of 300 years ago. They cook their food to oblivion in oil, particularly mustard oil. They boil it to oblivion, and that's what they're eating. What do you expect? They're getting, and this was a common thread, and I presented that at the hospital, and they said, you know, you're right. So they're eating rancid oils. What do you expect to happen to their cell membrane? And the nutritional content is destroyed when you cook food at that kind of high temperature. Then one thing leads to another, and I believe it takes somebody like me, because it didn't come to him. I'm saying that in jest. And in our book, The PEO Solution, how many of you heard of the French paradox? Not many of you. I'll tell you what the French paradox is. The French eat an extraordinarily rich diet. A lot of beef, pâté, very rich diet. It's full of saturated fat. And yet their incidence of vascular disease is significantly less than ours. And the idiots out there for years were trying to convince you that saturated fat is the cause of your vascular disease. Now, I never bought into that because saturated fat is a normal part of diet. But here they're telling us less saturated fat, and they're eating a really rich diet in saturated fat. They don't have heart disease. It's, oh, it must be red wine. The resveratrol in red wine. That's what it is. Well, you would have to drink several gallons a day of red wine to get the amount of resveratrol that would give you some protection. And I think if you did that, you'd be dead. You'd have wiped out your heart from that, because alcohol is toxic to the heart besides your brain, your liver, and everything else. So it can't be that. What it came to was it took somebody like me and the way I eat, because I think I'm the first person, and you're going to hear it publicly now for the first time, to resolve the French paradox. The French, remember I told you, I'm an organic, to the extent that I can be, raw food, near vegan. Do you all understand that? I eat a salad each night that will fit in here twice. That's what, and you saw me eat today, all right? We found a place here that actually could cater to me, thank the Lord. I was worried. So my wife and I eat this way. I'll give you some statistics in a moment. But the French do cook their food, but what do they cook it in? Butter. They cook it in butter. They don't cook it in vegetable oil. And butter is saturated, but it's shorter chain. It's medium chain triglyceride, and it has a low browning point. And the French are culinary artists, and they don't want to burn their butter and destroy their food, so they're cooking it at low temperature. Voila! They're not getting oxidized oil in their diet because they're using saturated fat in the form of butter, and they're cooking it at lower temperature where it oxidizes less and it destroys the nutritional content of the food less. Does everybody get that? So if you're going to cook food in oil, please, there's only two, and it's not olive oil. Butter or coconut oil or possibly palm oil. Because palm oil and coconut oil are medium chain triglycerides. You can't heat them up too much and they're much more stable. Don't even cook in olive oil. Olive oil is fine. If you want olive oil, put it in your salad dressing. I don't even use oil in my salad dressing. I mash an avocado. I put a hint of sesame oil on it, maybe a little hint of olive oil in it, just because it does have nutritional value. That's my oil base. I use raw coconut vinegar, garlic powder, sea salt, a couple other things. We're going to have that recipe up there. It's a salad dressing you will die for. It's so delicious.
What's the top temperature for butter?
Probably 150 degrees centigrade. 100 degrees centigrade is boiling point. So the top temperature for butter is about 150. If you go higher than that, you're going to brown it. And I strongly believe, there you have the resolution to the French paradox. You go to India, they're boiling everything to oblivion in a very vulnerable oil, mustard oil. Just a moment. I want to share one other thing with you, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. I told you I don't believe that God makes mistakes. I believe that God designed our bodies to be self-healing wonders of nature, including animals too. But you know, I think ours are even more wondrous, because if you fed an animal, they've done this on laboratory animals, if you fed an animal the type of diet that the average American is eating, they're history. Somehow we make it to 70, yes, with degenerative disease, with cancer, with heart disease and everything else. But we do survive. The animal won't even survive eating this trash. I believe there's 3 fundamental causes of dis-ease. Improper nutrition, toxins, and stress. Those are the 3 fundamental causes. If you address them, which government will never address because you don't make money on this, and government's controlled by money interests, if you address these 3, you can resolve just about everything. And if you can't resolve it, you can make it dramatically better. Yes, there are other things. I agree, there's injuries. Well, those are physical injuries. That's anatomy. Go to the hospital. I would. I broke my hand, I went to the hospital. There's genetics. But that's largely BS, because there's a new science called epigenetics. Do you all have a computer, right? It has a hard drive. You're at a keyboard. Who controls that hard drive? You do, at the keyboard, right? You're in control of it. The hard drive is the DNA. What you do to your DNA with the toxins and poisons and stress and everything else, that alters the expression of the DNA, and it corrupts the files. This is called epigenetics. So genetics are a portion of this, but you are more in control, believe it or not, than what your mother and father gave you. Although I'm going to tell you that what your mother and father gave you is really important, because epigenetics transcends generations. The Bible says, "Ye shall pay for the sins of your fathers even unto the 4th generation." I got chills when I went to a meeting in 1988 or 1989, and there was an article actually published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, that showed that if you make an animal deficient in zinc, the mineral zinc, its offspring will have an immune deficiency which will be transmitted to its offspring for 4 generations, even if you give it zinc back. And now we can see the same thing with all the chemicals that are in the environment, everything Monsanto's giving us. Pardon me, if you're farmers, I apologize, but I'm going to speak the truth. Chemicals in the environment and nutrition. It's being transmitted to our children, and we're seeing autism and immune dysfunction. And God knows, I don't even think God knows what's going to happen to us because of what we are choosing to do.
Going to have a break in about 2 minutes, so I'll have to cut you off real quick.
Anybody? Yet? Anybody?
You're not going to win.
You had a question, so you're going to be first.
We're going
no
to
one's going to
have
win.
questions after the break. But there's 2 things regarding nutrition. Parent essential oils are the #1 thing. It's not vitamins. Parent essential oils. The second thing is there's a deficiency of minerals. Minerals are coenzymes, just like vitamins, so they can make reactions go up to 1,000,000 times faster. I look at what are we eating and why is there a deficiency and why may you need a supplement. Well, with the POs, adulteration of the oils to get long shelf life. Makes sense. Minerals are not in the soil anymore. because the fertilizer they use isn't organic, so it's not cow manure that nature designed to have the waste of those animals put into the soil that puts it into the plant that we can eat. So there is a big mineral deficiency. The next one, for toxins, the best thing I've ever seen is a formulation called Essiac. It's non-irritating, non-stimulating. It comes from the Ojibwa Indians. Been around for over 100 years. I like a formulation that has cat's claw added to it. It's the best upper respiratory enhancer in the world. So this is the best blood purifier and natural chelator, helping to remove all the toxins I've ever seen. If you ever feel a cold coming on or anything, you take half a bottle of this stuff, the cold is gone. It is unbelievable. Asthma, unbelievable. Stress, again, the oils make your hormones. So we should be able to have huge stress. Look at the stress in the 1800s. You got the flu, you're probably dead. You got shot, what kind of surgery did they have? No anesthetic. You died of all kinds of things, and it was hazardous. You went across the country, there were no supermarkets. You got caught in a snowstorm, dead. So the stress back then was infinite. I'll give you, today there's more perceived stress. But these oils, again, are the endocrine system. So this is talked about in the book too. It's really, really interesting. Please take some time, look at the book. You could also go on the internet, peo-solution.com. It will give a lot of the accolades about it, but you can look at it out there. And take about 15 minutes to peruse this. Also, a 24-hour diet, if anybody was wondering about that. It was out of print for 3 years. It's back because I had so many people wanting it. It's updated to be completely consistent with PEO Solution. So please check outside in 15 minutes, and if you have a question, I guarantee other people will want to hear the answer. So save it for a couple of minutes, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Before you go, I'm going to give you some numbers to think about with me. Remember, I'm a vegetarian, and he didn't think it was possible to be healthy until he met me.
No, I never saw one. The ones I saw were very sickly.
All right.
Didn't look good, no energy. I mean, not good.
Big
difference.
My blood pressure on a bad day is 90 over 60. On an average day, it's about 85 over 55. I've been as low as 74 over 47, just to let you know. And I'm standing here in front of you. That's the blood pressure of a young adolescent. Is it low adrenals? No. I hiked the John Muir Trail a few years ago. It's the longest, roughest, toughest, highest altitude trek in North America, save Alaska. 200 miles, average elevation 10,000 feet. As an organic, raw food vegetarian. You're worried about hormones? My testosterone runs between 550 and over 800. I don't take any hormones. PSA, how many men are worried about prostate problems? I used to say, don't get a PSA. There's reasons for that, but I finally broke down because it's an indicator of inflammation in the prostate. So I decided to get one a few years ago, and it was 0.4. My wife said, get another one. Let's see, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe it was a fluke test. I got another one a couple months ago. It went up, 0.5.
And by the way, that is within the same margin of error.
Yeah.
It's you know, statistically, it's the same number.
I did the same test he recommended, a digital pulse analysis. My arteries are about 20 years younger than my chronological age. I've had tests that show absolutely zero plaque in my blood vessels. I dance circles around my colleagues, my age, on the trail. And I can give you number after number of my essential fatty acids. I don't take any supplements. Well, I do take a few supplements, but I don't, I'll be honest with you. You know, we're here to talk about this. But you don't eat my diet. If you ate the way I eat, you probably wouldn't need to do this. And I think you would admit it too. My essential fatty acid profile is perfect. And my minerals are spot on, but my zinc is borderline. Why? Because even though I eat organic, our soils are getting deficient and deficient. So I agree with the professor. The main deficiencies right now in the American are essential fatty acids and minerals. You're all deficient in minerals, guaranteed. And I'm okay because of the way I eat, but I'm borderline in zinc. So I'm telling you, you can eat this way and be healthy if you do it right. But since so few people are willing to do it right, I do use a lot of supplements, and my patients do get essential fatty acids, but they don't get marine oil. Thanks. Let's take a break.